All right, what's going on, everyone? Matt Bove, special Friday edition of the podcast, joined by Hayley Lewis, a friend from Kansas City, and she's decked out in her Chiefs gear, which I'm sure people are going
I
to,
know. I'm so sorry.
if they're watching on the video side of things. Hi, Hayley. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
Hey, listen, I know that I'm obnoxious just in its of itself existing, so I get it. I thought about switching shirts. I really did, but I was like, you know what? We're going on the Buffalo podcast. We just got to drive it home.
I love it. Well, actually, I don't love it. And I know a lot of people won't love it either, but that's okay. How long have you covered the Chiefs now? 'Cause we've known each other for probably like 5 years or something. How long have you been
Yeah.
covering the team?
I mean, honestly, yeah, it's going into so this is my 6th season covering
Okay.
the team. So let it be known, if you have beef with the Chiefs, you should really have beef with me because I came in week 4 of the 2019 season, which is when they won their first Super Bowl. Well, technically their second Super Bowl, but first one in 50 years. And then it's been bam, bam, bam after that. So I'll leave Kansas City if you want me to, but
If everybody wants to pool together some money and like
there you
bring her to
go.
Buffalo or something, maybe
You
she's the
can
good luck
bribe
charm.
me.
Yeah, you can bribe you. Let me ask you this, because this is interesting to me. Here for the last several weeks, honestly,
Mhm.
as we're getting ready for this game, everybody's talking about like the rivalry in this
Yeah.
game, and obviously, people are calling it like the game of the year and whatnot. What is the sense in Kansas City? Is this a rivalry to the Chiefs, or is this more of like a Buffalo rivalry because the Chiefs always seem to end their season on the grand stage?
You know what? I was saying this actually to another colleague the other day, and I said the infamous words of, I actually like Bills fans. And they were like, no, how do you like Bills fans? I'm like, because it's not like the Raiders and it's not like the Bengals or the Ravens. There's a mutual respect, I feel like, between these two teams. And although Kansas City has gotten the better of Buffalo in the postseason, which I guess is what really truly does matter, this is a team that continues to put, their foot on the gas. And every time they come into Kansas City, and honestly, every time they face the best of the best, quote unquote, if you want to look at the records, the Bills really give it to Kansas City. And I love the football that is created on the field when you see Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. So for me, I think in Kansas City terms, this is a very respected rivalry. And usually, rivalries are within your own little division. And I love that this has just become this big AFC encompassing battle that we're going to see between these two quarterbacks, because Josh Allen, as a lot of Kansas City people maybe don't want to recognize, is so fantastic as a talent. And I think a lot of times if he had the supporting cast, or maybe, and I don't want to knock on any coaches, but just more of the support that maybe Patrick Mahomes has here in Kansas City, we could see some more electric things out of him in that postseason stretch. So from the Kansas City perspective, this is a rivalry. They know how good the Bills are, and they talked about it all week at the podium. The Bills is going to be a really tough team to go up against, and Buffalo always has a chip on their shoulder.
Do Kansas City players, fans, like, does the city view the Bills as like the final thing that they need to overcome to get to another Super Bowl? Like, because in Buffalo, I think we're wired where it's like, okay, if you can get past the Chiefs in the playoffs, you're
Mhm.
going to get to where you're trying to go. And that's not to say like the Ravens aren't very good or the Bengals
Sure.
haven't had good teams. But is that the sense in Kansas City? It's like, well, if you get past the Bills, you're probably going back to another Super Bowl, or if the Ravens kind of leapfrogged Buffalo in that sense?
Well, I mean, it used to be the Bengals, right? And
Yeah.
then that happened. And so I don't think the Cincinnati brings the threat that they once did, because that was the whole storyline, them being able to get one over on Mahomes. I definitely think what the Ravens showed here in week 1 against the Chiefs and taking them all the way down to the wire, that was probably one of their toughest tests, if not the toughest test they've had so far this season. But I think it's safe to say that it's hard. It's hard to, when you're looking at the Ravens and the Bills right now, but it's definitely, if Kansas City is able to stay undefeated against the Bills
Mhm.
and keep this rolling in the regular season, playing the style of ball that they're playing right now, maybe not so necessarily having the best offensive showing that they've been able to do. I think that Buffalo really has been one of those things where it's, and I don't want to necessarily say it's like a thorn in their side,
Mhm.
but it's always, if you can get through Buffalo, the road will be much, much more smooth. And I think that was when I was going into the playoffs last season and prepping for all of, the broadcast and everything that we have to do. I thought, okay, Miami, cool. They'll beat Miami. That's fine. On
Yeah.
the road in Buffalo, getting past Josh Allen, that to me was the AFC Championship game, right? I know it was the divisional round, but
Mhm.
from my perspective of covering this team, and when we go back to the 13-second game, and we go back to the season even before that, in the AFC Championship, or excuse me, Now, see, now I'm going to get
Yeah.
confused because we go
AFC Championship, AFC
and
Divisional,
then
AFC Divisional.
divisional. There we go.
Yes.
It's always been Buffalo that I think has been that consistent team up there with the Chiefs. You know, Cincinnati and the Ravens, they've kind of teetered here and there, but it's
Yeah.
always been Buffalo and Kansas City in the postseason stretch.
Everybody is watching the Chiefs, like we do in Buffalo. Everybody's kind of paying attention to the team that you're chasing, and everybody
Mhm.
knows they're 9-0, but it feels like this year has been, a little teeter-tottery, like
It's
some good
weird.
and it's some bad. It's like, what is the
Mhm.
vibe there? Like, are fans happy? Are they confident that they can do this again? Or is it like, hey, maybe the record is a little bit prettier than the actual games are?
I mean, I can sympathize with other NFL fans and other people watching this game. It has got to be insufferable watching the Kansas City Chiefs play the way in which they have, and yet somehow they are 9-0, singing from the mountaintops, the back-to-back champs trying to three-peat. Having that shoved down your throat as an NFL fan, I get it. Because we had to go through it too, right? I mean, it was Tom Brady after Tom Brady after Tom Brady. And now Kansas City gets to have the luxury of playing that role. But I think the up and downs of this season, the injuries, and I can't say that the injuries are specific to Kansas City, right? Because that's something that's been happening throughout the entire league. But I will say the thing that makes Kansas City elite, in my opinion, is the fact that when one unit is down, another unit can step up, whether that be special teams, whether that be the defense, whether that be the offense. Now, it hasn't been the offense as much this season,
Mhm.
but they've been able to do enough, right? They go out, they lose their number one running back, and they go out and they find another one. They lose their number one wide receiver. They go out and find DeAndre Hopkins. They get Kareem Hunt. It's kind of eerie how perfectly those things have worked out, the transactions that have worked out for Kansas City to do so. So I would say from the perspective maybe of fans here, it's very frustrating. You have an undefeated and back-to-back champion team who can't blow out other teams. But is that really what's necessary when it's
Yeah.
just that every given Sunday mentality? And Andy Reid doesn't want to show his hand, obviously, because he wants to have a very long time playing in the playoffs to come here, hopefully for KC. So it's frustrating, but at the end of the day, you're winning. So it's just you got to take what you get and
Mhm.
hope that Kansas City has enough of the pieces and coaching ability to be able to overcome some of the what self-inflicted issues
Yeah.
that they've had.
How much are Chiefs fans talking about the idea of a perfect season? Or are we still a little bit too early for that to cross the mind of like Kansas City fans?
I think they're more fixated on the three-peats. That's something that, as long as the stage is set for Kansas City being able to go to the Super Bowl and have that opportunity again, I think fans wouldn't necessarily care how it happens. I think the undefeated streak, everyone here has this, and I don't want to put it into words, but it's like you kind of know it's not going to
Yeah.
last forever, right? You
Mhm.
kind of have that inkling of like at some point it's going to come. And does it come against the Bills, a great team who has beaten Kansas City the last 3 times in the regular season, I
In the
believe?
regular season, yeah.
Is that too terrible? So it's one of those things where I think more are focused on the fact that they want to get back to the Super Bowl rather than staying undefeated. It's been a fun streak, though. I mean, it really helps with pushing content and getting a bunch of fun stats to play with. But yeah, I mean, all good things come to an end, don't they?
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's like a sense in Buffalo a little bit too, which is weird. Bills fans want to win this game. There's
Hmm.
there's no doubt of that. But it almost feels like it doesn't matter because if they
Yeah.
play again in a month and a half, it's are you going to beat them in the playoffs? Are you going to be able to get over the hump? So it's weird because here it's like, yeah, it would be really nice to beat them, but
Hmm.
I don't think a lot of Bills fans think that the 1 seed is even attainable at this point. Because even if the Chiefs lose this game, it's like, are they really going to lose one or two
Yeah.
more? Like that feels a bit ambitious.
Yeah, and I think I'm sure that's really frustrating for Buffalo because they want to obviously go into this game avenging what happened during the playoffs last year. But again, you hit the nail on the head. Does it really matter that much? And I
Mhm.
think from a Kansas City point of view, if the Chiefs have their lone loss of the season to the Buffalo Bills, I'm, wiping my hands off and thinking, all right, cool, let's move on to the Panthers. Like, it's not that big of a deal because, again, it matters when you're playing good down the stretch and into that postseason run. So, obviously, I think for bragging rights and just maybe even
Yeah.
for confidence, this is probably more important for Buffalo. But that doesn't negate that this is still going to be exceptional football, will potentially be seen on Sunday.
So what's the deal with the offense? Are they bad? Are they just? Is it like Chiefs level? Is it bad is relative, right? Because they're still
Yeah, yeah,
very,
yeah.
very good. But as far as Chiefs are concerned, is this as
Mhm.
bad as it's been?
mean, it's not great. It's not great. The issues were really third down conversion, and then they were the red zone issues. Last year, it was all about dropping passes and not having receivers who had hands. And now this year, it kind of transitioned into the offensive line and the fact that the left tackle position has left Mahomes to be sacked so many times, and also throwing uncharacteristic like interceptions through the amount of what we're 9 games in, I guess, for Kansas City. So it's been uncharacteristic like, but is it panic button yet? No. I mean, third down conversion got really good by, I believe it was week 8 or whenever they were playing the Raiders. They started to really get that rolling. Red zone has grown a little better, and you see Travis Kelce getting those glimpses of seasons past. Obviously the man's older and different things are going to change, but with Hopkins coming in, taking some pressure off of him, that's been great. I think really the biggest thing is settling into their identity, and that's something that takes a little bit of time. Kansas City got to come out hot and heavy with Mahomes when he was taking over as a starter. Even in the 2019 season, NFL defenses didn't quite yet figure out what to do. They didn't have an answer for Mahomes. And then you started seeing Kansas City having to win in different ways because they figured out a lot of things that Mahomes did, figured out how to bring that pressure, not necessarily get him off of his game, but be able to contain him. And then you saw Kansas City start to lean on other units and find other ways to win. So I think the biggest thing with their offense right now is they've got to settle in and find that identity. And a lot of times it takes them well into week 10 or 11 to get there. But you've seen it before, Matt. Once they hit it, they're rolling. And I think Kansas City is a couple games away from getting all those little tweaks out of the way. The left tackle issue is really a big thing, though.
Yeah.
They got their rookie in there, Kingsley Suamataia. He originally won the training camp battle. And then you have a second-year player, Wanye Morris, who is now actually being the starter. He has a bone bruise on his knee, so he kind of had to rotate yesterday. I'm thinking like the day was yesterday.
Yeah.
The game last week had to rotate out, and so Kingsley came in, and there were a lot of opportunities for Mahomes to just be left open, and he had to scramble for his life like we saw him do against Tampa Bay in the Super Bowl back in 55. So I think with Kansas City, it's settling in, finding their identity. Long way of saying it, but give them a little more time, and they'll shake off the rust and find it.
Everybody in Buffalo knows, obviously, about Patrick Mahomes, and everybody knows about Travis Kelce. It feels like Travis Kelce's best games, at least like when they start to go down, he bounces back against the Bills. Like last year in the divisional round, he was unbelievable after doing nothing for like months. Who is the guy that we don't recognize who could have a very big impact in this game for the Chiefs offense specifically?
Well, that's a tough one because every single week it changes, right? You see a great showing. Juju Smith-Schuster is most likely going to be back for Kansas City. Obviously, Isaiah Pacheco, he got designated to return, but he's not ready to come back. So I think for Kansas City, the eyes are going to be locked in on DeAndre Hopkins, on Travis Kelce, and Kareem Hunt. I think a guy who continues to show that he's readily available and always goes off to have a big game when needed is Noah Gray. He's a tight end out of Duke. He's kind of played the backup to Travis Kelce, but he is just a trusted target of Mahomes. Also, Justin Watson, I'll throw him in there as well. But those are two guys when everyone else is getting pressured who just become available over the middle and all of a sudden make a gain of 31 yards. And you're just like, oh, okay, there's still more people. And you have to remember the thing that sucks to everyone else about the Chiefs is that their second string is a lot of other teams' best. And so the roster is so thick and it's so deep on the way down that you can have these little, nuances in games where players come up. So I would say keep your eyes out for Noah Gray. This could be a guy who pops off on Sunday, but I say that and then it's going to be another guy, right? Because there's too many guys to pinpoint on this offense.
Yeah, it's stupid. Like every time we watch these teams play, it's like, oh yeah, like Jerick McKinnon is having the best game of his career, or like, okay, this guy's doing something, and Bills fans just pull their hair out, and they're like, why does this always happen to us? Defensively, they're an exceptionally good defense, and I know that that's kind of what has gotten them to this undefeated 9-0 record. But how can they be beat? Like, are there any areas on that defense that are a potential mismatch for the Bills?
I mean, obviously they lose L'Jarius Sneed, right? He goes to the Tennessee Titans, and then they have to fill that void with Trent McDuffie. Now, Trent McDuffie has been phenomenal. He's an exceptional cornerback, and he's done a great job. And playing across from him was Jalen Watson, who was kind of taking over Trent McDuffie's previous role with LJ. And he ends up hurting himself, and now he's on the IR and going to be out for the rest of the season, maybe coming back for the playoffs. So filling that role has been Nazeeh Johnson and Joshua Williams. Williams and Shamari Connor. So it's kind of been this platoon rotational role. So I would think the secondary could potentially be a place to exploit. Also, maybe the linebacker core. Kansas City is so strong on the defensive line. I don't think that's where Buffalo is going to be able to get past. And then also just on the edge, they've been able to add some more players and key players who can come off and rush and even bring that blitz. So I would say secondary is really where Kansas City is most banged up and could be a potential place. We've seen Trent McDuffie uncharacteristically be beat one-on-one in 2 back-to-back games for touchdown scores. So that might be a hole that they can find a little bit of a glimmer of downfield hope for them.
How big of a loss is Butker for the next couple weeks?
I mean, it's not great. It's definitely not great. That shocked us all too, because that was a thing that that the team knew about, but no one leaked that one. So to everyone's surprise and to my wonderful surprise, I wrote an entire show, did an entire podcast, did an entire broadcast as well, and then all of a sudden the Butker news pops up on the injury report. So he just popped up yesterday after practice, and all of a sudden it was like bam, bam, bam. Okay, not only is he on the injury report, he's going to the IR. So that's another player going to the IR. And now we're bringing in some kid who was an undrafted rookie out of Notre Dame, also played for South Florida, and he played for the Colts. He got sent to the Jets, and now he's on the practice squad. And Kansas City's like, hey, you're kicking for the Super Bowl champ. So I think it's going to maybe affect some of those decisions by Reed. Do you go for it? Are there going to be some more gutsy calls that are going to be made? You can't lean on his leg as much as Kansas City likes to do because, hey, 60 yards out, no big deal. Harrison Butker can throw anything or get anything through the uprights. So it's going to be interesting to see how Kansas City they're going to have to lean on their offense to be able to finish things and make sure that they get 6 instead of leaning on 3. So we'll see how that affects them and maybe some of the calls that Andy Reid makes.
How's Ariza been for them?
He's been pretty good. Obviously, got to learn a few things. I think Dave Tobe, the special teams coordinator, was talking about, he has such a strong leg. Sometimes just making sure you get the right spin on the ball, making sure where it lands exactly, and all those different things. Obviously, special teams has had quite the turn of events this year, going into all the new rules that they were served with. But he's been pretty solid. Obviously, some controversial things for his career that happened that kept him sidelined and out of the game. But the Chiefs seem to love him. He seems to be doing a good job. And from watching on the sideline and what he's been able to do, he's played his part for Kansas City, which is what they need.
It's weird. I'm looking at the game and I'm like looking at the rosters and you see the name pop up because obviously it was here in Buffalo. And it's just, it's one of those things you're like, oh my gosh, I completely forgot that he ended up in Kansas City. And I know a lot of people listening to this are probably going to realize right now, it's like, oh yeah, that's where he ended up. So do you want to do a prediction? Do you do predictions? Like, how are you feeling about this game?
Predictions. Honestly,
some people are weird about it. So I don't ever want to paint anybody in a corner. Some people are like, no, I never do them.
I love to fail. So, I mean, and I miserably fail at all my score predictions. But I think although it hasn't been the Chiefs haven't really had this trend of scoring high, I do think with these two quarterbacks, it's a little bit of that battle. However, the defenses are so good. So I would say like a 28. Let's give Kansas City 28. So let's give Kansas City 28 and let's give Buffalo 24.
Okay. All right. I mean,
now, what's the math? I don't know. I just kind of came up with it, but I think it's going to be a really close game.
I mean, that's like a slight over. It's like it's a cover for the Chiefs and like a slight
right now the Chiefs
over.
are the underdog, right? By 2, aren't they still?
2.5. Yeah. Which is, I know probably not something that Chiefs fans or the team is used to. It's weird here too.
The thing is Patrick Mahomes is almost just as good as an underdog as he is as a favorite. So it's kind of one of those things where I'm like, you know what? Give him more bulletable material. I like it. Juice him up.
So let me ask you this. This is the final question for me. Can they repeat and do they? Like, is that going to be something? Obviously, that's a lot bigger of a prediction than just picking this game this weekend. But like, do you think that this team is good enough to go back and win another Super Bowl?
I think that with anything as big as and monumental as that, right? There's been a reason that other teams haven't been able to do it. And I think a lot of it not only comes down to, yes, injuries down the stretch, having the right team, the ability, other teams have to be down while you're up. I think it also comes down to a little bit of luck. Somebody's got to statistically have a little bit of luck. And right now, for Kansas City to be playing the way that they have, to be 9-0, I feel like the luck is kind of on Kansas City's side. So if you got a little bit of luck and you can figure it out down the stretch, again, they have a time where they're playing, I believe, 3 games within a 10-day span. So it's going to get dicey toward the end. But if any team could do it, I think it's Kansas City. And this year has already shocked me in ways that I never thought that they would be here or where they are right now. If you told me that they won the first 2 games against the Bengals and the Ravens, I mean, that would have taken me out there and then. So I think, honestly, with a little bit of luck that's been on their side, if any team can do it, this is the team. And it's going to be quite some time before we have another team with a plausible chance like Kansas City actually has.
You want to hear my spicy take?
Ooh, do tell.
I think the Bills are going to lose this game on Sunday.
No.
I think the Chiefs are going to win, and then I think the Bills are going to beat them in the playoffs. I really do.
I would
really
like
do.
So let's flip that. And then yes.
Hey,
Cool.
I gotta say, so I remember, I mean, we've done this now basically like 10 times every time that they play. And I remember the 13-second year, everybody in the press box.
Didn't I text you like congrats already?
Well, like I think like at 13 seconds, like they score. I think you texted me like, this is insane. And it was just so ridiculous. And then last year too, like, you know, you're in the press box, you're doing so many things. As Tyler Bass is kicking to try and tie the game with 44 seconds left, like I'm like typing something ready to go, like trying to get everything ready. And it's like, okay, the Chiefs are going to get the ball back. He's going to make this kick, and then he misses it. And then it just happens. And you hear like, just like the sigh out in the stadium of just like, oh no, it's ended. I mean, these games have been unbelievable.
There have been so many times where I know a lot of us in Kansas City and in Buffalo have been in those texts where it's just like, you know what, congrats, you guys got it this year, like happy for y'all, you know, whatever. And it somehow flip-flops. There have been so many times when I thought the Chiefs were for sure going to lose. So, I mean, by the odds, it's got to pan out in Buffalo's favor at least one time. So you might be right on that perspective.
Hey, Bills fans just want one. They don't need a three-peat. They just want one. They just want Josh Allen to win a Super Bowl, and that's all they care about. Tell everyone where they can follow you, see all of your stuff if they're more interested in the Chiefs down the stretch here.
For sure. So working with Bleacher Report, so you can follow me at @HayleyLewis_sports. That's where you'll find all my stuff with them as well here in Kansas City with Kansas City Sports Network. So yeah, follow me at @HayleyLewis_sports. Don't forget the underscore. You know, it's monumental.
All right, for Hayley Lewis with the underscore and Matt Bove, thank you for watching and listening to this little Friday edition of It's Always Game Day in Buffalo.